Want to welcome on into the program. I've been looking forward to speaking with Brandon Lewis from the Tennessee Conservative. Now, Brandon, I follow you folks on Twitter, and you have some great content, so I wanted to invite you on, and I'm glad that you agreed to come on my little radio show here, because one of the things that we like to talk about amongst conservatives is how frustrating how frustrated we've all been regarding illegal aliens in the state of Tennessee. And so you in particular, and I find this interesting, you say that this is really an issue that the Republicans in the state legislature have the power to deal with, but you are saying that they're not dealing with it in the most effective of ways. Now, you just had a poll out, a recent poll by Tennessee Conservative, points out that 99% of Tennesseans polled were unhappy with Tennessee GOP leadership's stance on illegal immigration. Of course, they say, as you say, that they feel like that's a federal issue. They want our state elected lawmakers to pass state laws to deal with this issue. And you know, quite frankly, you say they're not. So let's go through some of this. I do find it fascinating. You say this all really started, and I remember this. I've been here a long time, back in 2019, when Governor Bill Lee authorized the refugee resettlement here in the state of Tennessee. This was, of course, when Donald Trump was in office. But that decision by Governor Lee, really, it was a major impact after Joe Biden took office.
Well, it was, and I appreciate you having me on the program. You know, in 2020, we broke a huge news story that got national headlines about a covert illegal immigration center in Chattanooga, Tennessee, that was full of kids. And the long story of that is that some kids were molested, some kids were lost. Bill Lee authorized it because of our reporting. That center eventually got shut down, but not before the damage was done. And this is all about the same time. And some subscribers from all over the state of Tennessee were sending us pictures of buses and planes of tons of illegal aliens just deboarding here in Tennessee. And so the GOP solution was to put together a do-nothing committee, and they did nothing. And then later in 2022, bills were brought that would allow local law enforcement to enforce immigration laws. It was killed by Republicans. We had a law that would have stopped taxpayer funding of illegal immigration. It was killed by Republicans. We had relocating them to blue states, similar to what Florida and Texas have done. It was killed by Republicans. We tried to increase E-Verify, and it was killed by Republicans, but they did approve giving illegal aliens professional licenses, and that was signed by Governor Bill Lee and carried by Shane Reeves. And I'll give you just a couple more, and then I'll let you all make your decisions. In 2023, there was a bill that would require illegal aliens to have their status check to vote, and that was killed. But Dale Carr did bring one that would weaken the immigration checks in our state, and luckily our reporting got that withdrawn. There was another one where William Lambert wanted illegal aliens to be police officers, and he withdrew that when we reported it. Both of them said they didn't read the bill. But the long story short is it cost $571 million in Tennessee for us to just educate illegal aliens, and all the rest of the welfare and everything else comes up to almost $1 billion. And then we've got somewhere between 50 and 60 thousand ELL students that continue to flood into especially these urban schools, and native Tennesseans and kids are suffering the consequences. In the GOP, all they can do is go down like Governor Lee does to the border and get a good photo op. But if it's not posting on social media, and if it's not getting a picture taken, he's not going to do anything.
Brandon, let me ask you, because and I remember that facility in Chattanooga when that happened, awful story. I had remembered that state lawmakers were actually trying to figure out exactly who was coming here and how many were coming here. And so this is just in the last couple of years. It's gotten worse, obviously, under Joe Biden. Do we have any idea how many have come and are still coming to our state?
Our state government is almost exclusively blind on this because they have not allocated any resources to keep up with it. And they keep writing these sternly worded letters to the federal agencies, which are controlled by Biden, and they continue to ignore them or stall or not answer their questions. They have no intention of stopping this invasion into Tennessee. And so it is very frustrating. They could solve all these problems with 4 simple bills: one that would stop the taxpayer funding of education, one that would tighten up the restrictions on hiring, and then a third that would cut off the benefits and then stop the mass transportation. If they passed those 4 bills, which they could do this session, they would fix all the problems, and illegal aliens would go live in other states. But I don't know if you know this or not, Dan, but 90% of the money that goes into Republican leadership campaign coffers in Tennessee at the state level comes from left-leaning corporations and special interest groups outside of the districts they represent. And so you've got this huge conflict, Dan, between the votes coming from people like me and you, but the money coming from left-leaning corporations. And when push comes to shove, the corporations get what they want in Tennessee. We really don't have a GOP, we have a COP, and that's a corporately owned party.
Let me ask you, because obviously you've been in touch with these folks. So I guess my question would be, have you tried to get in touch with these folks specifically regarding the illegal immigration situation? Because, and I don't need your poll to tell us how frustrated people are with illegal immigration, specifically in our state, because it is a conservative state. So I guess my question is, have you reached out to the lawmakers and have you asked them, why are you not voting on these? Why are these not being passed through committee? Because there's a lot of really good ideas here. And to listen to your synopsis, and I've done some reading up on all of this, of course, and we cover them when it happens. But some of these things just don't make it out of committee. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out, well, what's going on?
So we have contacted every Republican. We're actually going to have a Protect Tennessee Borders rally on March 20th up at the Capitol House steps, in hopes that if we can do what Matt Walsh did and give Bill Lee a black eye on transgender surgeries, they might pass bills about that they previously killed, which is what they did in that situation, right? The cameras came in, and then they wouldn't run Janice's bill that had been brought and killed by Republicans 2 years ago, and then they adopted. So we're hoping that if we make enough noise about this, and if Tennesseans just understand how apathetic Republicans are at the state level to handle this, they'll demand something different heading into the primaries. And I would say this, Dan, the number one reason we probably don't see anything done is because the money, every time there's an illegal immigration bill brought, the Chamber of Commerce comes down there, the Tennessee Business Roundtable, and they lobby against it. Bill Lee lobbies against it, and it gets killed. And one of the quickest ways to end your career, to not be on a committee, to not have any power or authority, is to do anything that Cameron Sexton or Randy McNally doesn't like, and that includes, number one, touching anything that has to do with illegal immigration. Then there are a handful of organizations that pull those people together. Well, corporations, when they see an illegal alien, they see 2 things. They see cheap labor, and then they see another customer. If you're Verizon, if you're Coca-Cola, if you're anybody who sells something to the populace, right? Like it is more customers, it's more revenue. And then a lot of the government bureaucratic agencies, it costs us right now $12,000 a year every time an illegal alien child comes into Tennessee and is put in a school. So if somebody brings 3 kids that can't speak English, that aren't familiar with their culture, who are behind in their schoolwork, they should be in remedial courses, but now they're in a 5th grade classroom. Well, that costs us $36,000 a year from now to the end of time. And so all these forces, both governmental and corporate, are really completely antithetical to what your average conservative wants to see happen.
So when you reach out to, say, for example, you name-checked a Cameron Sexton. So when you reach out to a Cameron Sexton or some of these other state lawmakers, what do they say? They must dialogue with you. You've got tens of thousands of followers on Twitter, so there's got to be some sort of a conversation.
Well, when we do, we usually get either radio silence, and I believe even, McNally and Sexton won't even let us or the Tennessee Holler go into a press pool because we're two of the only, and I don't agree with them, right? I'm not, except for maybe on corporate welfare. We both agree that that's a bad thing. But, they don't want tough questions. Their money comes from the corporations. The news reporters that are there are Democrats. I think they did the last study in 2020, and only 4% of reporters identify as Republican anymore. And so it's Democrat corporately controlled media. They'll let those people hustle around them. But when somebody comes questioning their credentials for being conservative, they don't want to hear it because the truth has legs. And it's painful because people can do their research and find out that everything I've said has been completely true. But yes, I do reach out, and we either get radio silence or they'll give us some kind of crappy boilerplate quote blaming Joe Biden for every problem we have in Tennessee relative to this issue, when in fact they've been aiding and abetting this for decades.
Do you think that if they did some of these things that you recommend, and of course I recommend all of these as well, stop funding of the education of illegal aliens, enforce E-Verify, utilize E-Verify, then force E-Verify, relocate illegal aliens to the homes of Joe Biden. Kamala Harris was another bill that was submitted that apparently failed. I love all of these ideas, but let me ask you this. If these were actually passed, then do you think that the Biden administration and some of these other, groups that transport these illegal aliens, do you think that would actually help the situation here in Tennessee?
Oh, absolutely. If you start fining companies $200,000 or $300,000 every time you catch them with a busload, the illegal immigrants or Delta Airlines or whoever else is flying these people in here,
yep.
If you start giving people financial penalties, and if you start taking away the magnets that pull illegal aliens here, and if you start increasing the penalties for those, I mean, everything that's not enumerated in the Constitution to the federal government is to the states, but we have just completely lost our way in Tennessee on things like nullification, on asserting our states' rights. And the first thing you always hear the rhinos say whenever you talk about this is like, well, they'll take us to court. Of course they take us to court every time we do anything conservative. That's like par for the course. And so what it really is I don't want to get the ire of Sexton and McNally on me. I don't want to lose my corporate donations because I'm too lazy to fundraise back in my home district. And finally, for people that are wanting to run for office that aren't afraid of leadership, this is a winning issue. When we did a policy poll, and 60% of Tennesseans said this was their number one issue. It's not corporate welfare. So why is it we've got all this energy and effort to give millions and billions away to these left-leaning corporations, the Tennessee Titans, Ford Motor Companies, already failing electrical vehicle division that lost $2 billion a year ago, and we put $2 billion into it. It's a boondoggle. And but they get all the energy and effort. They even can call a special session to do that stuff, but they just can't seem to find any time or resources to deal with illegal immigration. Well, why do you think that is, Dan?
Interesting. Fascinating. Brandon, thank you very much for joining us here on Super Talk 99.7. It is the Tennessee Conservative. Is that the official Twitter moniker, X-moniker?
Yes. Just search Tennessee Conservative wherever you get your news, your podcasts, your social media, and you can go to TennesseeConservativeNews.com, hit the subscribe button, get on our newsletter list, and be one of the few Tennesseans that go to the polls informed.